So this is part of a security adjacent assortment. What I mean by that is this isn't strictly a security talk. This is, well, it's security adjacent, right? You can use this to do security things. You might consider a home labbing talk or a home prod talk or just a home networking talk of sorts. But one of the issues that seems to happen with a lot of ISPs is that you get one public IPv4 address, and sometimes it's not even routable to you. So how can we fix that, right? Especially if you're trying to separate. I've given a couple talks on home lab versus home prod and making sure they're as separate as they can be and all that stuff. And one of the things that I like to do is try and give them each their own public IPv4 if I can, right? Because I have home prod stuff that I want routed into me, and then I have home lab stuff that I want routed into the home lab. ISP, for those not familiar with all the acronyms, Internet Service Provider is ISP. Also, I will probably at some point conflate MetroNet and MyFiber. They are very different. However, I use those terms interchangeably. Feel free to stop me. And if you're watching this recording, look at what's on the screen, not what comes out of my mouth. But anyhow, so there are some interesting policies regarding static addressing. So back with CenturyLink, when I had them, if you would call within a certain time frame when they had certain staff on hand, they'd basically let you buy whatever you wanted for addresses up to like a block of 5 for your home address. MetroNet won't do that if you are zoned for residential as far as they are concerned. So since my address is a residential address, MetroNet just will not sell me a block of IP addresses. Even if I tell them, what if I want to pay business rates? They're like, well, you can't because your zone says residential, so we're not doing that. I don't know if this is their fault or if that's something, at a higher level that's business versus not. But anyhow, free DDNS stuff, and I put free in parentheses. There are a lot of paid DDNS or dynamic DNS. So the way those work is basically when your IP address changes, right? If you most of you are going to be on home connections that have a dynamic address, right? So every time your router reboots or your modem reboots, it's going to reach back out for DHCP and say, hey, I need an IP address. And then the ISP will give you one. DDNS can help with that a bit because you can point a host name at that just always updates whenever your IP address updates. So that can help with a little bit of it, but not with the separation. Static IPv4 addresses typically cost money. There are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, if you want a static IPv4, you're going to be paying something for it. Jump hosts and similar, which are some other ways around, maybe some of these hosting things and whatnot, they also tend to cost money. So, start with a disclaimer. I don't do these very often, at least not to this level. This might be against your terms of service or similar. I am not liable for your actions. Don't sue me, bro. If you are watching this talk and you are aware of any internet service provider and you're watching this through any medium, you are prohibited from suing me. Thanks. And you must agree to my terms to continue. Anyhow, your mileage may vary. Different ISPs or plans might behave differently. And as well as even within an internet service provider and a plan combination, the equipment can sometimes play a role. I did not find anything when I looked for all of the providers that I'm going to go through here. I did not find anything that was against the terms of service, the TOS, or the acceptable use policy, the AUP. And I'm very specifically wording that, and you'll see why here in a handful of slides. And I already mentioned using ISP names interchangeably, so if you catch that, feel free to stop me. This is the basic idea or topology. If you've done networking stuff before, and this slide makes sense to you, I'm probably not going to provide a whole lot of value in the rest of this talk. But if you're not entirely sure what I'm referring to, or you just want to know more about ISPs or just want to be here for the fun of it, great, I'm going to continue. The basic idea, though, is the signal comes in from your ISP. It does a media conversion. Typically, this is a modem. That actually stands for modulate and demodulate, modem. Typically, that was either a coaxial cable or a phone line if you had either something from a cable provider or from a DSL provider. However, a lot of things are fiber now. There's still typically a media conversion. It's just typically referred to as an ONT or an optical network terminal. The Lumen family of stuff, Quantum Fiber and CenturyLink and all that, they refer to it as a smart NID for smart network interface device, I believe. But anyhow, after the media conversion, you put it onto a switch of some sort. It can either be an unmanaged switch, think like the little 5-port things that you've probably seen laying around everywhere, Or you can drop it on its own VLAN. And then from there, just have 2 different devices get DHCP, and there you go. Now, here's my compatibility matrix that is known to work, at least the last that I tested with each of these. And note that there is an asterisk with MetroNet, some caveats apply there. The compatibility of almost known not to work. So, MyFiber, and I believe it is pronounced MyFiber, but for a while I wasn't sure if it was MeFiber. They are aware. I talked with them a little bit before this talk for reasons that will soon become apparent. Not to go down too far down the road on that, they both said, we'd rather you not show this, and this isn't a problem at all, in as many words. So, the problem with MyFiber, as far as doing what I'm going to talk about in the rest of the talk, is you basically get a static. You don't even have to pay extra for it. You just get a static, but that's it. There is no DHCP, so there's no way to get extra IPs. I mean, sure, you could maybe guess and be like, well, I'm going to see if this neighboring IP is in use. But that's probably a bad idea. Now, who knows what BEC stands for most of the time in a security sense? Anyone shout it out? Yeah. Business email compromise. That's not this BEC. It's kind of ironic. If your MyFiber came with one of these and it's still in use, do you know the password to this? If not, go ahead and pull out your password manager. See if you got it. Because sometimes, if you were there when they installed it and they saw that you were a tech person, they go ahead and give you the password. And it was a randomly assigned password, which is generally a good thing. So the username was admin. Here's the problem. It was randomly assigned and then assigned to every device. So if this is still your password, you might want to go change that. This was for consumer accounts and business accounts. If you are at all concerned about it, MyFiber support encourages you to reach out to them to find out. They also stopped deploying these at some point in time, so if you're past that period of time, should be good to go. But it's really the only notable thing that I have to say about MyFiber is that you already get a static, so that's kind of cool. You don't have DHCP, so that's kind of not cool. And if you have one of those BEC devices and these are your creds, maybe go change them. So, some of the things that I don't know about, let me throw those out first. Actual Lumen Fiber, and then Quantum Fiber. Did you know that the Quantum Fiber brand actually has a copper-based DSL service? And it's named something like Quantum Fiber, parentheses, copper, which is hilarious to me because they still want to move over all the billing platforms from the CenturyLink stuff, but if they don't have fiber there yet, that's just how they do it. Starlink, I didn't get my hands on a Starlink systems test, and then Windstream DSL Fiber are the other ones that I thought of. So these, I have no idea if any of this works. If you want to help me test, let me know. CenturyLink, if you have, and specifically this is all referring to DSL for these slides. However, it also does work for CenturyLink Fiber. Quantum Fiber's later, so this is just CenturyLink. Put your DSL modem into transparent bridging, or if it's fiber, you can just remove the DSL modem entirely, because when they deployed CenturyLink Fiber, they go from an ONT to a DSL modem to your equipment. And if that modem's still in place, you can just remove that. Transparent bridging, tag 201, the fiber ONT, like I said, remove the modem, and then either an OpenSense or pfSense, whatever your firewall is. It's a little weird. What you want to do is you want to assign the WAN interface to the PPPoE interface. If you don't have a PPPoE interface, you need to get one. And you need to get your PPPoE creds. PPPoE stands for point-to-point protocol over Ethernet, because there was just PPP, and then they added the Ethernet onto it. And then the PPPoE will be assigned to your physical, or if you're doing everything on VLANs, it'll be assigned to your VLAN. So you've got either the physical interface, and then maybe a VLAN, which then is assigned to the physical interface, and then the PPPoE that's assigned to that VLAN, or the physical, and then the WAN interface of your firewall that's assigned to the PPPoE. And here's kind of what that looks like in practice. So here is in the actual modem settings. These are the 2 things you need to change. Transparent bridging, and then tagged 201. That goes for both, again, if it's whether it's their fiber service or their DSL. These screenshots were taken from a DSL modem. And then in these screenshots are from OpenSense. You see that I've got the identifier WAN, the device PPPoE 0, and then the description is the WAN, and then I had like CenturyLink or something there. You can block private and bogon, whatever works. And then notice the IPv4 configuration type is PPPoE. And then in the PPP configuration, so that PPPoE 0 device, that's the third screenshot there, link type PPPoE, the VLAN that you want to assign it to, and then whatever you want it to be called, and then your username and password from the ISP, which if it's CenturyLink is typically going to be something at CenturyLink.net, unless it was old, and then maybe even got a Quest.net thrown in there. And Quantum Fiber copper service, I'm not sure what it is because I haven't directly tested that. Here is that thing where I said it's not against the TOS and it's not against the AUP. However, it might be against the high-speed internet subscriber agreement. And here are the two relevant clauses of that. So you're not allowed to permit more than one internet log-on session to be active at one time. And you're not allowed to use more than one IP address for each log-on session. So if you have one logon session and multiple IPs, that's a no-go. If you have multiple logon sessions, that's a no-go. What is a logon session defined as? If it's defined as PPPoE, then yeah, doing this with DSL equipment might technically be violating this high-speed subscriber agreement. However, the way that it's worded, you must not permit. You can't control it if somebody else gets a hold of your PPPoE creds. I have tested up to 3 simultaneous at 2 different locations with the same set of creds. So it doesn't seem to care, and anyone that has enough demographic data on you and your account number and such can impersonate you and get your PPPoE creds, and they're not something you can change. So I'm not sure why they're necessarily putting the onus on the end user for this, but just something to be aware of there. Google Fiber. The ONT needs provisioned with the ISP. Kind of go figure. It's bound to the MAC address typically. And then you just kind of plug stuff in. That's how you do it with Google Fiber. You just plug stuff into the VLAN or your unmanaged switch or whatever you got. Get DHCP for everything. There you go. You're good. You got public IPv4 addresses, which kind of the same as Mediacom. Speaking of Mediacom, they have a modem, again, needs provisioned with the ISP. It's MAC bound to the MAC address or media access control, and you just plug stuff in. There's, again, not any configuration to do. And some ISP provided, some of the modems that Mediacom will provide have 2 Ethernet jacks. And if you plug something into each, it does this internally. It has a little switch in there that's doing this. And the reason I know that it's just another switch doing DHCP is that I have seen it where from the same physical modem at the same place, the same account, same everything, those 2 Ethernet jacks will have all of the dotted quad different. They're not like 2 within the same subnet or anything. They are completely different. One will start with a 7.3 and the other will start with a 1.95. I don't know. I'm making those numbers up. But for example, they'll be completely different. It's 6.7, sure. So yeah, so Mediacom, as far as I can tell, almost encourages multiple IPv4 here. Metronet, caveat number 1. By default, if you're not paying for a static address, it is using CGNAT. That stands for Carrier Grade NAT or Carrier Grade Network Address Translation, which basically means you're effed to an extent. So what happens there is you get a 100 dot address, or I've heard stories of people getting 10 dot addresses, which is kind of sketchy. But anyhow, you get a 100 dot address, and then everyone else in your little neighborhood, your little fiberhood, gets 100 dot address as well. And then there's a single IPv4 address that you don't have port forwarding ability on, that you all share going out to the internet. So the problem with this, of course, is you're trying to host things, that doesn't really help you. Caveat number 2 is if you do want a static IPv4, you need to pay for that, right? And I was trying to come up with ways that you could do this without, paying monthly fees. However, there's a fun little thing. If you do pay for a static IPv4 and then you do the same, plug it into a VLAN or into an unmanaged switch, you can DHCP from that same thing. Right? So you'll have one static IPv4 that's properly routed and all that, and then you'll have a second IP address that's not routed or anything, but will show up to traffic, right? So if you just wanted to host, say, a website, but every time you visit a corporation's website, Netflix, YouTube, whatever, you don't want them being able to see that you run a website, then you could potentially separate it out that way, right? Or if you want home prod to be routed into you, and then home lab, you're just going to use Cloudflare tunnels or something, then you can have 2 public IPv4 addresses, but only the static one that you're paying for will be routable. Quantum Fiber, this is a fun one. I spent too many hours last night going through this again because I needed to get the screenshots. So the ONT or the SmartNID is configured with the ISP, and they make it very, very, very clear. If you ever move, the SmartNID is supposed to stay. You do not own that. The house owns that, or probably more technically, the ISP owns that. Normally, it should be a solid blue light. Transparent bridging should be a solid white. The representatives don't know this. If you try and ask them, they don't really follow that. They don't have a lot of documentation about transparent bridging. Also, showing blinking blue is fine. The status light is sort of vibe coded, I think. But anyhow, so configure OpenSense or whatever your firewall is to DHCP on VLAN 201 and or your switch for VLAN 201. And it has to be VLAN 201. I could not get it to work doing anything else. And I tried all sorts of things. I tried, okay, well, I'm going to, change the settings here. So here's what the ONT or SmartNID configuration looks like. It's transparent bridging, and you need untagged. So remember, for the DSL stuff and the CenturyLink branded stuff, we're using tag 201. For this, you want untagged. And what that will do is that will hand over traffic that is tagged with VLAN 201, but in a weird way. And I've tried it with tag 201, and I get like internet for a little bit, and then it goes out. And then I get it for a few seconds, and then it goes out. So it's like it's trying to work, but it's not happy. Also, I tried dumb things like, okay, well, I'm going to try and remove the tag once it comes into my switch, and then I can put it on whatever VLAN I want, and it just didn't work. Now, that might be a me issue. I'm not really a networking person, but this is what I found that works. If you do untagged and then have your switch with a tagged port, and it had to be tagged. So what I ended up doing, I wanted it to only have VLAN 201, but I wanted it tagged. Most switches get a little bit angry because they also want an untagged VLAN there as well if it's some sort of a trunk port, right? So I just did untagged VLAN 2 because I'm not using that for anything, and then tag 201, and it worked. And then in OpenSense, I did the same thing that I showed on the earlier slide with it's just this VLAN, only I used VLAN 201 because that's all I could get to work. Pro tip, if you need to factory reset your SmartNID, the documentation on quantum fiber is all big and scary, and do not do this without assistance. Just don't. Here's how to reboot it, but we're not telling you how to factory reset it. So I was on a chat last night, and after a while, I got it pulled out of him. Hold for 45 seconds. What's up? So the question was, can you still use the second box? It's the access point if you do this. Yes and no. So yes, there's nothing preventing you from using that. However, you might need to do a bit more legwork on it. You're going to have your own DHCP server and all that. It's not going to act the same way. So if you're wanting to use that device, I would probably not do this, or just be ready to factory reset everything a few times until you get that sorted out. I also thought it was fun. I'm going to start calling these ONT++, because the SmartNID is not just an ONT, because an ONT, again, is a media conversion, but this is media conversion in the same box. I think some of them even have Wi-Fi, but clearly it has a web UI, it has a DHCP server, it has all this other stuff. And fun fact about this, there's no logged on session. So even though it might be against the exact same, and I did check, and the wording for those two sections was identical between CenturyLink documentation and quantum fiber documentation, it doesn't apply here, at least not from my reading, because you're not doing a logged on session. There's no PPPoE. So I don't think it's against any rules to do this with quantum fiber, even though I think it's technically against like a rule and a half with CenturyLink DSL. So with that, here's the QR code and link to this presentation. There are the spots to find me. Any questions? Yeah. Did I try this with a Netgear or other third-party modem type thing? Yes and no. I have not tried it recently, but I've done enough things that I know that that will work. If you put the switch in front of the modem, right, like an unmanaged switch in front of the modem, or VLAN or whatever, and then plug the WAN port of the modem into the switch, and then plug your second Netgear or D-Link or whatever you got, the WAN port into that same switch, yeah, they'll both get DHCP and work. Or if you've got something that does require PPPoE, you'll need to set up PPPoE on both of those in order for them each to get an address. But yeah, it's a good question, but those should work fine. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. Yeah. T-Mobile recently acquired MetroNet. Do I foresee a policy change on that? Not in the near future, but I expect lots of things to change, and I'm not sure what to look forward to and what to not look forward to. But that will definitely be something that when it breaks, I will see what happens. I do know that those little home internet devices, you get the little boxes, they don't work with this sort of stuff because they are forcing you to have a NAT. They don't let you do a one-to-one or anything like that. They don't let you go into transparent bridging. They are forcing it on you because they know that I exist. So the question was CGNet pretty consistent as far as ISPs? Did some have it or not? Was it based on geography, et cetera? As best as I know, that is an ISP level thing. Now, how the CGNet is implemented, right? Whether you're getting 10 dots or 100 dots or what type of addresses you're getting that are behind the CGNet, that seems to vary geographically. Because I've heard a lot of Ames people saying they get 10 dots. I get 100 dots, and I know other people in the area that have got 100 dots. Which 100 dots are the right way to do it if you look up the RFCs. But like MetroNet does CGNet, and MyFiber does not. So like at an ISP level, they're, as far as I'm aware, they're either doing it or they're not. There's nothing stopping them from changing that, right? But from what I've seen in my experience, yeah, the ISP level determines are they doing CGNet, and then the geographical stuff can determine how are they implementing it. Good questions. Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? All right, have a good one.